you know, you get heaven and earth, spring, summer, dry, wet, etc., etc. But what you can't see there is good and evil. So it's very important and very significant that the European table of opposites had good and evil in it, whereas the Oriental one doesn't. And so you get the idea within the Oriental Taoist philosophy of there being complementary and the importance of balance between yin and yang.
Where did the misunderstanding of being yin and yang being as good and evil opposing forces come from? Is it because of our Western view towards the Eastern theology, or?
Yes, probably we've imposed this Western dualism onto yin and yang. But yin and yang within Oriental philosophy is not like that.
Because even the shape is not even opposing, it's accepting.
Well, that's right, they fit together very nicely, yeah. So it's a very different conception between this and Pythagoras' table of opposites. Yeah. So any questions about that? Does that make sense? So lots and lots of examples one can come across, how this works. So what else is the world like? Well, another thing we could say, everything has two aspects, an outer form and an inner quality. Everything has those two aspects. The outer form is visible, and it resembles the invisible inner quality. So, for example, what does your face resemble?
Personality.
Okay. Lika, I can see you. What's your face? When you're looking at somebody, what does that person's face show you? Character?
Current emotions?
Yes, it shows, when you look at someone's face, you can tell what they're thinking and feeling, because our face is like a window into the soul. So, in that sense, the face, the outer visible form, resembles the invisible inner quality. And so when people are trying to play poker, what are they trying to do?
Poker face.
Yes, they're trying to stop what's on the inside from being expressed on the outside, because normally we can read a person's face. Yeah? Because, that's the way it is. And it's very, very hard to hide your emotions. It's very, very hard to hide your thoughts. And, that's what scientists say as they look. Even minuscule muscle movements happen, which we can't even control, and we're not even aware that they're happen, because the thoughts automatically affect the facial expressions. It's just without being able to control it. And so the inner quality is a structure which is manifested in the outer form, in our face, but also people say in our palm. So some people, they read the palm, and they can say, you can see certain things in your palm about your character, your personality, and these sorts of things. So these two aspects we call the dual characteristics of internal nature and external form. So again, let's have a look at some examples in the world in which we live. So for example, a sign. If you're driving along, you see a road sign. What can you see? You can see perhaps a triangle, a piece of metal, perhaps with a red band around it, and something inside it. But what does that convey? It conveys meaning. But can you see the meaning? The meaning itself is invisible. So when I'm speaking, what's happening? My vocal cords are making the air vibrate, and this vibrating air striking your eardrums, and your eardrums are converting it into a sound, and that sound makes sense. Yes? So these things is the outer form of something invisible. So if you look at a word, W-O-R-D, if you couldn't speak English, all you would see is white marks on a blue background. But because you speak and understand English, you know that that word has a meaning. It conveys an idea. So again, in linguistics, it's called a signified and a signifier. Again, it's the way it is. If you take your car to the garage to get fixed, and you watch a mechanic, does it look difficult, what he's doing? No.
Yes, it does to me.
Looks difficult to you, does it?
Yeah.
And when I look at it, I think I could have done that myself. What's the most shocking thing about taking your car to the garage? The bill. You pay I don't know what it is now, about £80 an hour for this person to work on your car. And you look at it, it's just gone out and that and that and that, and pull this out and put that in, and I have to pay that amount of money for that? So what makes a mechanic different is he has these skills and this knowledge, but you can't see the skills and knowledge. If you put a mechanic through, an X-ray and another person through an X-ray, you can't tell the difference. What makes a mechanic different is this invisible quality that he has, these skills and this knowledge. The same with a watch. A watch is made of metal, but this metal is organized in a particular way, has a design which is invisible. If you look at carbon, again you can get a lump of carbon, and this carbon can be organized in several different ways. It can be organized as a diamond, invisible structures as organizes these carbon atoms as a diamond, or as a lump of coal. Now supposing you got married, and the person you got married to presented you with a ring with a beautiful piece of carbon on top of it. And it said it's black, but it's got exactly the same atoms as a diamond has. Would you be satisfied? No, wouldn't be pleased at all. So what makes a difference is the internal structure, the internal nature. And again, with many religious traditions, the Christian tradition, you have baptism, where somebody gets immersed into water, sprinkled water, and this idea that through this person receives some grace. It's a sacramental theology. And if you came from another planet and you saw water coming out of a person's eyes, you might wonder what's going on. You may analyze the water and you find out, you might analyze the liquid and find out it's made of salt and water, and what might you do?
Sink is leaking.
You think, oh, that person's leaking, I better give them a glass of salty water so they can, replace the water they've lost. Would that be an appropriate response? No. Because tears represent something. They represent sorrow or they represent joy. You can't see the sorrow, you can't see the joy, you can see as the tears, but you know those tears represent something. And when you see someone crying, often you can feel how they feel. The emotion you can feel, but something invisible. So lots of things which are invisible, which are part of our reality, we can't see them. All we can see is what's on the outside, the external form, which is an expression of an invisible internal reality. So that's the way it is. Everything then has an internal nature and an external form. And so human beings have a mind, a soul, which is invisible, internal, and an external form, which is the body. And not one is they're sort of together. As Wittgenstein said, the human body is the best picture of the human soul. If you want to understand what a person's thinking, you look at their face and their expressions and their body language and all these things, because, just unconsciously express how one feels. Have you heard of something called cellular memory? Quite interesting. I came across it in a newspaper quite a year ago, I think. Anyway, I'll just read you a few excerpts. Gary Layton, who's 44, is a plumber from London. This week he told how he had discovered a gift for painting after undergoing a kidney transplant operation. This is a person who'd been a plumber, never painted before, had a kidney transplant operation, and suddenly he discovered a gift for painting. Why do you think that was?
The painter. Kidney belonged to a painter.
Yeah, the kidney belonged to a painter. And so when we have memories, our memories aren't spiritual, all our memories are embedded in our physical body. Yeah. Not just in our brain, but our whole physical body is the store of all our memories. So another person here, father of 3, had a cornea, a bit of his eye transplanted. In March this year, he's taken to doing the dusting and washing up, and developed an aversion to grime he didn't have before. Why do you think that was? Yeah, his cornea transplant came from someone who was a housewife. And his wife was happy, because suddenly he went round doing the cleaning in the house. And so, as I said, scientific studies have suggested up to a third of organ transplant patients believe they've inherited changes in their personalities, preferences and skills from their donors. And so the thing is, how to explain this phenomena. And as I said, because our human body is the external form, is an expression of the internal character. So our whole of our physical body is an expression of our internal character. So if you have an organ transplant, you don't just get the physical kidney, you also get the internal structure, an invisible, soul that was behind that and goes with it. It's kind of interesting.
Does that have something to do with why sometimes children, even having not met their parents, often resemble them in a very strong way because of the cells that they got from their parents with the genes?
Yeah, because these things are carried on through the DNA, yes. It's embedded in the DNA. And so that's why, people talk about a criminal gene, for example. You can identify criminal families and they look at the genetic code and they can identify a gene. So it looks like this is sort of cutting edge science, it's called epigenesis. The idea that as you change yourself, this actually affects the DNA of your sperm or eggs. And if you become a worse person, then it affects it, or a better person. It actually affects it in that way. And so these personality traits then are passed on. Which is quite curious.
Is that an argument for maturing your character and your skills before having children?
Yeah. And developing because as I said, all these memories are imprinted in our physical body. So if you have bad memories, so sometimes people become physically ill, because of some kind of stressful or bad experience that they have, because it imprints upon our physical body. And so the thing is how to get rid of these imprints, to purify these imprints and these memories, actually leads to good health as well. So how are these related? So one is an expression of the other. So it's not that these are two different things. There's one human being with two dimensions to our nature: a physical, external, and an invisible, internal nature to our who we are. And so you can see this. Yeah. So I said that the outer is an expression of the inner. So in a human being, you get heart, mind, soul, and you get a body. And animals also have an instinct, an animal mind. Animals also have feelings and thoughts, depending on their level. Even mosquitoes, I used to think mosquitoes are incredibly intelligent. Because I remember when I was, living in Russia, mosquitoes used to drive me mad. I couldn't go to bed, sleep. There was a live mosquito. And sometimes when I'd see it, and then it would fly away. And I thought, it just knew that I just spotted it. So it was really funny. And also plants, again, have this invisible nature, a taxis, which are like a sort of primitive instinct guiding a certain kind of direction. And also people say that, plants are sensitive to music and all sorts of aspects of the environment and atmosphere as well. And molecules also have a directive nature, and atoms and particles also have a directive nature, leading them towards greater and greater levels of complexity. So, positive and negative are naturally attracted towards each other. But when you get, a couple of hydrogen atoms and some oxygen atoms, they have a tendency to combine together to form water. And molecules have a tendency to form greater and greater levels of complexity. And so you can see this in the natural world. This movement from bottom going up, this natural inherent directive nature towards greater and greater levels of complexity. So you get particles form atoms, atoms form molecules, molecules combine together and they form, eventually organic matter, and then animals, humans, just, it's a sort of driving force behind evolution, really. And so you get this sort of self-generating order that says in the principle, the human mind imparts to every person a natural inclination to join with others in harmony. So do people normally just want to be alone? People normally, they want to engage in conversation. So when two people are sitting alone in a train carriage together, they usually try and figure out some kind of way of starting a conversation. There's a natural desire to form, join together with others in harmony, form a conversation, a relationship, to form friendships. And likewise, positive and negative ions come together to form particular molecules, because every one of them exists a rudimentary internal nature that guides them towards that end. This is the philosophical basis for the idea of evolution, as I said. And so, if God exists, then if all the things in the universe have an inner and outer aspects, the ultimate cause or creator of the universe must also possess the dual characteristics of internal nature and external form. So, if God exists, God also as Paul said, there's a character and power. So often people talk about that God is a God of love, but also God is a God of power. The power is like the outer form of God, and the love, the heart, is like the inner nature of God. So, yeah, what's the relationship between God and the universe? The universe, you could say, is complete when God is at the center. God is, these are all points assuming the nature or the belief in the existence of God. God is the internal masculine subject partner, the universe is the external feminine object partner. So this kind of relationship between God and the universe. The universe is like an expression of God's nature, partner of God.
Do we know this point here about God being internal masculine? Is that we understand this from the Bible?
Yeah, kind of. There's a big problem talking about God using language, because our language, the language we have is the language which we use to describe the world in which we live and to describe the relationships that we have. But God isn't in this world. So when we try to describe God, it becomes a problem because God is invisible. So, but all we have are the language that we have, father and mother. So often people attribute to God these qualities of masculine or feminine, or father and mother.
I was just asking why it is that we assume God to be masculine rather than feminine.
It's just relatively speaking, relative to the universe, we could say the universe is like feminine. And that's why people have this expression, talk about Mother Earth. Because they have this...
It's an assumption.
It's just an assumption, sorry?
It's an assumption, it's not facts like...
You can't...
Atoms have positives and negatives, that's facts.
Right. So this is taking the language that we use to describe the natural world and using that language to try and describe the relationship between God and the world. It's inadequate.
But you already mentioned that God is masculine and feminine.
Yes.
Well, I think the missing thing here is
Oh,
that it mentions here subject partner
yeah.
and object partner.
Mm.
And we really haven't dealt with that whole...
Right.
You mentioned, for instance, about masculinity and femininity,
Yeah.
positivity and negativity.
Mm.
But it hasn't brought in this whole concept of initiator and response into the equation.
Good
So
point.
That's where, for instance...
Right, so that's something I left out, isn't it?
Yeah.
I need to integrate that and put that in. Thanks.
So it would be more like initiator and substantiator, like the relationship between the sperm and the egg. And in terms of God, masculine and feminine nature, the ideal is anyway is that it is in oneness, it's not separate. So we as human beings, because our understanding is in separating things, instead of seeing it as something that should ideally be in oneness, we say masculine and feminine. But if God is in complete harmony with internal nature, his internal nature is in complete harmony with his external being, then also it's masculine and feminine, so you cannot really, it's not really an adequate argument to separate them so much, but that's how we can understand it easier.
Yeah, to understand things, we usually divide things up. Yeah. But anyway, it's like a relative thing. As you're saying, I should have pointed out, masculinity tends to be more subject, initiating, femininity more responding. And so that's why, say God is... It's a relative thing. Relative to the universe, God is like the subject, the universe is object. So God is like masculine, the universe is like feminine. And so that's why often within the biblical tradition, God is regarded as masculine or called a father, generally speaking, because that's all we have with our language.
Is this because our society back then was male-dominated?
It's just a matter of the fact that that's our language, I guess. But I understand that God is masculine and feminine, harmonized into oneness. But when you look at, in terms of the relationship between God and the natural world, God is like more masculine compared to the natural world. So that's why people have expressions like Mother Earth, regard that the Earth has been like a sort of mother. It's the best way of describing it, I guess.
You have that in Eastern religion as well.
Yeah.
They describe God more in the feminine aspect.
Right. So, as I said, at the end of the day, you can't words are inadequate to describe what God is like. So just because it says that doesn't mean it's really like that. It's just we're trying to use our inadequate. It simplifies it. It's trying to understand what is a relationship like. Is like that. relationship between God and the universe is like the relationship between subject and object, or between masculine and feminine. So.
Do you think that when you take masculine and femininity, there's two types of masculine and femininity? Is the personality, and then there's roles. The masculine type role is initiator, but masculine type personality we see is what we typically experience as masculine. The absence of men, which is influenced by the environment.
Right, gender we call it, yeah. There's that as well, yeah.
So, like, in this case it's more about the roles than the actual personality.
Yeah, more about roles, yeah, so subject and object, yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so let's see. Okay. Yeah, so the universe then is like the image of, the universe like things like the symbol of God, and people are like creating the image of God. Okay, so shall we have a, all right, shall we have a break now? Tea, coffee, biscuits?